Welcome back to the Girl Stop Playing podcast. It's your favorite homegirl, Coriel, here to encourage you to stop playing with your potential and start working for what you want in life and in love. Y'all know I'm bringing you the information and the conversation to help you make the money and get the honey. You can have it all as long as you are willing to work for it. But this is part 2 of a very special, super important conversation, especially for the Black women who tune in, tap in, plug into this podcast every single week. And this week, I get to introduce y'all to somebody very special, Christine, Mrs. Birth by Grace herself. She's like an Atlanta legend in these birthing streets.
Okay.
You be doing a damn thing, okay? You got a wait list. If you're having a baby, hit her up today. If you're thinking about having a baby, you got to hit her up today to get on the wait list. Christine, give yourself a proper introduction.
Thank you, Coriel. That was a lot, girl. I am Christine Taylor. I am a certified nurse midwife and owner of Birth by Grace Midwifery Services. We're in a small town south of Atlanta called Tyrone, Georgia.
The people drive, though.
The people drive. The people drive from everywhere to come for their midwifery care and plan for their home birth.
So Christine was my midwife, y'all, if y'all haven't figured that out. But one of the things that I was looking for and intrigued by when I was, doing my research on different options was the work that you were doing before you actually opened your own practice. So can you talk a little bit about like where you started in this space?
So I actually started, I didn't know I wanted to be a midwife. So until I met the first midwife I was working with as a labor and delivery nurse in Chicago, south side of Chicago, which is where I'm from. And so I met a midwife just on a regular shift one day, and I was just so intrigued by her work, and I was completely lost. I didn't know what she was, who she was. All I knew was she was delivering this baby without a physician around. And so I'm like, who are you, girl? Like, what are you doing? Who are you? She's like, my friend's name is Mika. I am Mika.
Black woman.
Black woman. She's a Black midwife in Savannah now. She's been in Savannah a few years now. But she introduced me to midwifery, actually. So I immediately, adopted her as my mentor and entered midwifery school. And coming out of midwifery school, I was working as a midwife, a baby midwife on the south side of Chicago, the same hospital that I was a nurse at. In a community that I kind of grew up in, so it was very warm and fuzzy and fulfilling for me.
So the fact that you were already in the medical field, you were a nurse, and still this idea of being a midwife was not something common. So when us as women learn about, having a midwife versus going the traditional route, it's not necessarily something that's talked about often. It's not the most popular thing. And I can see why now, because you were in the medical field and it still wasn't just like another option for you.
Correct. So I think that the powers that be they succeeded in eradicating the idea of midwifery and the midwives of the South and the granny midwives, and they eradicated that, because now we think traditional care is the physician's office, where it's really the other way around, where traditional care is really midwifery care. I feel like it's a shame that it's not at the forefront like it used to be.
It's like the alternative now.
It's really an alternative, absolutely.
The most common.
Most safest routes to have your baby and be cared for by women. And so it's a disservice to women, because as we know, we have a lot of issues going on with maternal health care, especially for Black women.
So can you talk a little bit about like the difference, because you worked in a traditional hospital doing labor and delivery versus your experience now doing in-home births?
So the care is very different. The system that we work in, that the physicians, nurses, the medical system that's in place now, is not designed to offer compassionate, individualized, warm and fuzzy care to women, and you think that it should be, right? This is the most intimate time for a woman and her family. Having a baby is one of the most vulnerable situations, events in your life. Why is our system not geared towards that?
They treat it like you coming in for a procedure.
Yeah,
And not
absolutely.
an experience.
You're definitely a part of a system and a part of something much bigger that has little to do with how you feel.
And like I said, your experience. It's almost like it's not a medical procedure, but it's very much so. Okay, at this time we're going to do this. Now it's time to do that. Versus, what do you need? What are you going through at this particular time? It's very much by the book.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel that midwifery care does offer that one-on-one conversations. Even how much conversation did you have at the doctor's office, right? Versus when you came to my office, we actually sat down on the couch, took your shoes off, and we really dug into, what we needed to during your care. So midwifery care is definitely something much more different, but very much needed, so that families can feel, cared for as a whole.
And feel like you're a part of the
your
process
care.
Versus, so my personal experience, and y'all probably ain't gonna tell all my business. That's gonna be a whole nother
That's all right.
That's going to be a whole nother episode. But I had the unique experience of having dual care. Yeah. So my husband works for Kaiser. I have Kaiser insurance, thankfully. So I was able to go through Kaiser, went to all my appointments at Kaiser, but then I came and saw you as well.
Yeah.
And Kaiser isn't like the worst thing ever in the world. It's not necessarily what I had imagined it to be.
Sure.
In my, if you watch The Business of Giving Birth, it's like, scary. So it wasn't that. But it was definitely very different from what I experienced with you, because the 10 minutes that I had, with the doctor, and it was almost like a dictating conversation versus a partnership conversation where, I was able to express what I wanted versus somebody telling me what I needed.
Yes.
And that was a very different conversation.
Definitely.
Why do you think Black women specifically are dealing with so many of the challenges that we are when it comes to the entire birthing process?
So when we talk about that, I like to just jog people's memory and take us way back to when our bodies were stolen from Africa, right? Our bodies, the Black woman's body, has never been upheld as anything of value, okay? Our bodies have been mutilated and abused and used as experimentation for different procedures that are happening today in modern medicine, right? So the fact that, we're still dealing with challenges, we know the Black woman is still not regarded, in high regard, her care, her health care, her whole well-being, right? It's not that shocking to me, right? What needs to change is how we approach our own care, because we need to become the defenders, the first line of defense for our own bodies. I don't care who you're going to.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's just challenging. There's so many, that's a multifaceted, topic, because there's so many things that are held, that we're up against.
What would you say are some of the most common things? Because I feel like, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm seeing a lot of, I was obviously a first-time mom, and I was seeking out, alternative options. But I think that you get a lot of people who are not first-time moms, who have, experienced their first birth in a traditional hospital, and then they like, no, sis, the second time around, I'm at least going to explore different options. So what are some of those challenges or struggles that you're seeing most common with the women that you're serving?
When it comes to moms who've had babies already, so they have a point of reference. And they know that whatever they experienced during their first experience, they don't want to experience that again. They know that there's something different, and they seek that intentionally, it's just once you go through something, as a first-time mom, you have no point of reference.
Right.
So you are doing your best to do the research you need to do to navigate. But it's really hard because you don't know, there's so many different things that can happen in pregnancy, and you don't really know the outcome of your birth, what things are going to do or be for you. But that second, third, fourth time around, it's like, okay.
I know what I want now.
I know what I want now. What do they say? 20/20 vision is
hindsight is 20/20.
Yeah, hindsight is 20/20. I know what I don't want. I know what I do want. And then that fear in them breaks down.
Yeah.
And they have a lot more confidence too.
So one thing that we have talked about a couple of times on the show is, we talk a lot about the struggles of getting pregnant. One thing I realized when I was pregnant was like, getting pregnant is one thing. Staying pregnant is another thing that you just don't really know about or hear about or talk about until you're going through the thing. What are some of the I guess things that women who are watching this that are maybe planning for pregnancy, what are some of the things that they could be thinking about or doing now to prepare for the best, most healthy pregnancy?
I love that question because I think we should have more conversations around planning for your birth, planning your pregnancy so that you can be more prepared as you can be. But it all comes back to like living a healthy lifestyle, and, lowering your stress levels, really addressing your stress levels and getting a manage on that, because stress, we have different stressors. As Black women, our stressors look different from another woman, and so, really trying to get our affairs in order, and seeking your provider as well, right? Seeking who you're going to go see once you do become pregnant. What does your diet look like? Because, we're predisposed. You tired of that conversation, aren't you?
We were just talking, like, that's one thing we don't want to hear. You could tell me to do anything else, but if you tell me to stop eating my favorite food, I'm going to fight you on it.
Exactly. And that's the struggle, so start that struggle before pregnancy so that, once you are pregnant, you will have some sort of different habits to have carry a healthy pregnancy to term, and then your options aren't going to be too limited later.
So are you supposed to eat for two?
Are you supposed to eat for two? So you're supposed to eat, a few more calories than you would if you weren't pregnant. However, eating in abundance is not the same as eating nutritionally, to get good nutrition in your body. So yeah, that's a myth.
Stop playing, that was a little jokey joke.
Right.
So you talk about stressors, and one of the things from the outside looking in, I feel like the work that you do, like Christine, the fact that you are sitting in this chair right now, I told my producer, like, she's on call, her life is on call. I don't know how you do, and your husband, I don't know how do you do that? How do you live? Because I got to give you your flowers. Because it's like you've literally dedicated your life to doing this work. I mean, you have children of your own who I'm sure deal with the challenges of having a mom whose life is always on call. Sure. So how do you navigate that?
It is a struggle. And me and my other midwife girlfriends, we always are trying to find the balance with each other in our lives. Right. Is that possible in anything, right? Juggling everything. When I first started, it was about 7 years ago, I opened my practice, and I think I was more focused on like this survival mode sort of deal, because I was a single mom at the time. I worked a job that I quit because I was super busy. And at that moment, it was more like I have to keep moving. So I don't have any time to process, think about it, I have to keep going, right? But over the past, I think the pandemic is when it really hit, like, okay, I'm, doing a lot, and I started to allow the idea of, okay, you might be a little bit overwhelmed. Let's dial it down.
The self-awareness that it takes to even
because you don't want, that's very vulnerable as a businesswoman.
As a Black woman.
As a Black woman, you don't want anyone thinking you can't
handle it.
You're weak or you're tired or whatever. And I just started to accept the fact that, okay, things have to evolve into something different. Let me tone down or do whatever I need to do so that I can, maintain a healthy relationship with my husband, my children, my household, myself. So yeah, that's an ongoing struggle, but I am privy to the things I know that I need to do to push through that.
So in my mind, it's like you wake up and somebody could be having a baby and you got to go. And it does not matter like what you had to do this morning. Like you got to go. Is that how your life really is?
Not really. I think there's a misconception that that's what it looks like every single day.
That is what I think.
No, ma'am.
So what does it really look like? It's like every other day? It seems like you're doing a lot of
home
births.
I don't do half the number of births that my colleagues do.
Okay.
Okay, so I think I always talk about this too. Like, I'm complaining over 5 births a month, and this midwife's doing 10. And I know I couldn't do that, and it's not the births I talk about. It's everything else.
Right.
I love
because once it's showtime, it's showtime.
But I love that part. I love catching babies. I don't like the back office stuff. So that's the stuff that gets on your nerves.
Gotcha.
The business aspect of your practice. Because we're all a one-woman show doing our own thing, right? So it's not catching the babies. I love that part. It's like everything else.
That comes along with it.
Yeah, paperwork and faxing and all this stuff.
So in the midst of catching the babies, serving the community, you caught you a man. How did you do it? How did you find the time to? Because there are so many women who are like, I got to do this work in survival mode. I got to do this work. I got to pay these bills. I got to make it happen. I got to show up.
Yeah.
I don't have time for a man. You didn't do that though. How did you not do that? And you might have been doing that for a little while, but I don't know. I don't want to assume, but I feel like we go through the phase of like, I'll get to that later.
Absolutely. So my husband, he and I met on a blind date. We were set up.
Shut up. Let's talk about it.
I didn't know. Okay.
What do you mean?
I didn't know it was a blind date and it was a setup because his best friend is his wife is a physician I used to work with in Chicago. Okay. So they had this whole thing going, and I'm just trying to go out. Like, okay, I got these kids. I want to go out. And it just went from there. He wouldn't stop, the next day he's around, and the next day, and the next day, and the next day. And so, it was just really, I did pray specifically for my husband. Before I knew him, I prayed specifically for him, and I let it go because I'm busy, right? Whatever, right?
That's the key, though, the letting it go.
That is the key. And so I was just very blessed because he definitely showed up in my life as a stand-up man, like, look, I got you. He fell right into it. He saw the groove. He like, okay, I got you here and here and here. And I was still out in these streets, working. And so it was just a blessing because, I'm able to now not have to be such on this high, like, thing. It takes a special man to be with a midwife.
That part, too, because, again, you live on call. And so we hear the chatter around, being with a high achieving, successful woman who's doing all the things. Sometimes your husband does get put on the back burner. And so I can just imagine the work that you're doing. It's not like, baby, I got to make this meeting. It's like, baby, I got to catch this baby. Yeah. And that is not something that you can necessarily like call in sick for.
Correct.
So I imagine that can be a challenge. How do you navigate that? Do you ever feel like guilty or feel like the superwoman thing? Like, I got to do it all the right way?
I have regular breakdowns about that. The guilt, the guilt can consume me sometimes. And I always come back to my husband because he's always able to balance that out for me. He listens to me. I'm able to cry and cuss and do all the things I need to do to throw my fit. You know what I mean? No judgment. And then, because he's definitely holding the household down. Like, definitely. Like, I'm hardly home. I think he's holding it down more than I am. That's for sure. Because I do have to leave. And I do have to do my duties as a midwife. But I can leave and do that knowing that my house is good. My girls are good,
You got a therapist, though.
I have a therapist.
We are advocates for therapy here. Why is having a therapist important, period, but especially for the work that you do?
So having a therapist for me, it helps me to just put things into perspective because sometimes we take our blinders off and we feel like we're not doing what other people are doing or I'm not where I should be because I don't know, or I feel like I'm neglecting my children and they're going to grow up and hate me. You know what I mean? All those thoughts and feelings are very real and raw. So you definitely need someone to help you navigate through those feelings and, just help you give yourself some grace through that.
So one thing that I love is how you incorporate your daughters into your world, really, and making them feel like we're doing this. This is not just mommy's thing, but you do your little videos like working with mommy today, and because for entrepreneurs, it's easy. I saw a quote where Layla Ali was like, I be misquoting people all the time, so I should stop saying they post. But what she was basically explaining was how the world got this great man. Like the world got to see this great man, but she didn't necessarily get that at home because he was out being this great man for the world. And I think that's a very common thing for entrepreneurs or people who are, you know, really working to change the world. But then our world is like, but mommy, you know, what's up?
Who is that
so,
person?
Right. Who I want some of that. And so I can just imagine, I mean, you know, my baby can't talk yet, but I can just imagine I don't want to say guilt, but just those feelings that come along with knowing that you're doing such impactful work, but also making sure that you're impacting your children.
Yes, and that can leave you very torn because you don't want to appear like, oh, that's more important than you are.
Right.
You know, that is a constant struggle, you know, especially I think it might be easier when they're younger because they don't really
They can't tell you. At least if they feeling something, they
can't
can't tell you.
You know, whatever. But, you know, when they get older, they notice. And, you know, your presence is going to be everything to them when they get older, you know. So that is definitely an ongoing situation in my world, in my life, you know.
And balance just is not.
Balance is something I think we keep clawing at, keep trying at, and you have to because if you don't, you know. So I don't know if balance is what we can really achieve. Is it really achievable?
I don't think so. I like to say, like, when people ask me that question, I'm like, balance is BS. Like, I prioritize what I have to do. Like, I told y'all, like, my husband is home with the baby right now. I'm sorry. I'm at work. You know, like this in this moment. Yeah. Now, when I walk out of here, it's a different story. But in this moment, this was my priority for the day. And I can't feel guilty that my priority in this moment is this. Because I know that that'll be my priority later. And I think sometimes we just have to, it's a juggle.
It's definitely
you know, it's a juggle, and it can become a struggle if you are seeking this balance thing that I don't really think it exists.
Yeah. I think that you're very fortunate if you have a partner that you all understand each other, and just roll with it.
And pretend like they understand, because I know they be bad sometimes.
But when they go to work, okay. Right.
Baby, you don't hear from me.
Okay.
Getting it done. It's getting done.
Getting done.
He gonna be like, girl, if you don't stop talking about me, stop talking about me on this show. But those are the conversations, though. I feel like if you don't ever say these things out loud, when you're going through it, you feel like you're the worst person in the world.
Absolutely.
And you're the only one struggling. But it's like, no, these high achieving women that you might, you know, look on Instagram and be inspired by, they're going through the same thing.
Absolutely. And that should be more, you know, shown in the forefront as well. Like the struggle behind all your success, you know, because you're not doing it by yourself.
At all.
You know, it takes a village for you to be where you're at, for us to be where we are. So, you know, what's up?
What is up? Okay, I got to get back to the, I don't want to say the art of home birth, but like the process, because like we mentioned, it has become like a taboo thing. You know, like when I was telling people that I was doing a home birth, the reactions that I got was just like, oh, yeah. Girl, stop playing. Like, what do you mean? Are you? And it was almost like, and I know when people, you know, say things, they're not necessarily saying it to be negative. They're usually just worried about you, and it comes out as, you know, their concern comes out as like criticism. So what are some of, I guess, like the biggest misconceptions that people have around home birth?
I think one is that it's a careless option, right? Like, I feel like, so first of all, moms who opt for home birth are the most informed mothers, okay? Like, these ladies, birthing people, okay? Like, they've done their research.
Christine.
Listen.
You got to say that? You got to say that for political correctness?
I don't know.
As part of your job or something?
Lord Jesus. I thought that would be, we cutting that out.
No, we ain't cutting it out. I want the people to see me saying we women are not birthing people. We are women. But go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So, all the people that opt for home birth, you know, they've done hella research, right? Like, they're not making that decision blindly. Most of them. So yeah, it's another misconception is that you don't get any care. You know, that somebody just shows up while you're in labor and catch a baby, and you know. And another is that, you know, no one's trained, right? So that's a whole nother conversation. Is the training level of different midwives and routes and everything. But yeah, I would say that's probably the biggest conception, is that it's just this careless thing that people are doing.
And you're just risking it all.
And you're just risking it all.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's the direct opposite.
So one of the things that I learned, so I thought, you know, I'm like, I'm a pioneer out here. I'm about to have a home birth, you know? And then I get in these Facebook groups. And I got into one group that was like unassisted home birth. Oh, that's a whole nother
different situation.
Explain that, because what?
So unassisted birth is something that basically you are wanting to have your baby alone at home without any
you and your husband, you and your
trained
partner.
Yeah, or a doula or something like that. That's unassisted. So some people opt to just.
How do you feel about that?
I'm not a supporter of unassisted birth. I'm just not. I don't think that. I don't think that's
that's risky.
That's like the ultimate risk for me. And it's funny because I think I've had a lot of moms come to me who've had unassisted births. They've attempted an unassisted birth, but decided that wasn't really the route to take the next time around because of whatever might have happened or whatever. When you're choosing unassisted birth, that means you're deciding to wear all the hats. You're deciding to be the midwife, the EMT, the NICU nurse, the birthing, the one having the baby. Why would you do that to yourself? Like, why do you feel like you would need to take on all these roles and be a part of your own experience of birth?
Baby, I don't know.
I'm a midwife. I don't want to be my own midwife. You know what I mean? Like, give me somebody to, take care of me so I can be the person in the process, all in and present in every way. But, that's an option that women are taking, and that's, their right.
choice, but baby, risking it all. You mentioned doula, and doula I feel like is one of those words that has become like a buzzword, but not a lot of people know what a doula actually is. So can you talk about what a doula is, and then obviously the difference between a midwife and a doula?
So a doula is a non-medical childbirth support person, okay? Doulas support women in all areas of childbirth. During pregnancy, they're great resources for education. They're great resources for breastfeeding and, just preparing moms for birth. During labor, they come and labor with you. They have all the tools and tricks of the trade to help you throughout your process, be it unmedicated or medicated. They work in every setting: hospital, home, birth center. But they are not trained to deliver your baby. They are not trained to be the medical professional attending your birth.
They're usually like certified or something. Sometimes they take some classes. No, they don't.
Doulas there are different classes, different certifications for doulas.
But that's not a requirement.
No, there is no requirement.
Because they're really just your support person.
Yeah.
So you also just mentioned birthing centers. And again, these are things, which is why this conversation is so important, because you should not be learning these things while you are pregnant. Like, these are things that our mothers, I don't want to say should have, but conversations that we should have been privy to at some point in our life before it was like a pressing matter. So one of the resources that I, stumbled across was a birthing center. So in my opinion, a birthing center is like the midway point between a home birth and a hospital. But can you give the real, I guess, definition of what a birthing center is?
Basically what you said. It's a sweet spot between home and hospital.
What's the difference between that and a hospital?
What?
A birthing center.
So a birthing center is a place that you go to for your prenatal care, and when you're in labor, you go to that place, that birthing center, to birth your baby. Within 4 hours after birth, 4 to 6 hours, you are discharged back home with your baby. That's the birth center setup, basically.
Gotcha.
Obviously, at home, your birth team comes to you. So you have the luxury of staying at your house when you're in labor, and your midwife and your doula and your whoever you've decided to be a part of your birth comes to your house and supports you and is with you during birth.
So I think one of the first questions I asked you was like, what am I supposed to do about the pain? I think that's the first thing that people think about, like a home birth. That means no medication.
Yeah.
So what she told me was, your doula is going to be your pain medication. And I was like, well, what is that supposed to be? That don't sound too helpful. But what is your answer to that when people, I mean, I know that that's your answer, but what is, I guess, another answer that we could offer to the people for like that part of it? Because naturally there's fear around
Absolutely.
like the actually feeling the birthing process. So what are some of, I guess, the tools or resources that women have available?
So that's been taught to us and passed down to us that labor is painful. Labor's painful. Labor's horrible. It's the worst pain you ever feel in your life. You're going to feel like you're dying. That's what we're taught. Okay. And I'm going to just open that up with, I had epidurals with my babies, right? I ordered up my epidural and pinpointed and assigned all my nurses and doctors, right? So because there was no option for that was not a conversation when I was having my babies up in Chicago. But if you are opting or thinking about home birth, the first decision you made is that you're going to have an unmedicated birth.
That's the first one,
right? So there is no epidural at the house. There is no IV pain medicine at the house. So tools and resources are, that starts with childbirth education. That starts with, a doula, who can help you understand the process of labor and what, you and the midwife and the doula can teach you throughout pregnancy what you're going to expect. Taking some classes and really immersing yourself in what natural birth is and what to expect. You know what I mean? Because I get a lot of moms who go through it and they're like, oh, it wasn't that bad. I mean, people say it's bad, but it wasn't horrible.
The other day, I got microblading, and the girl was like, you had a baby. Like, this is not going to, I feel like when people say that, I'm insulted because, girl, I had a baby, but that doesn't mean I don't feel pain anymore. However, what I do feel like was like the worst pain, like I feel like my wisdom teeth was worse than birthing my child. So I do agree that a lot of it is like what we've put in our head that's going to dictate how our experience actually goes.
Mind over matter.
Yeah. But that, listen, I'm going to just say this. All those classes, Christine, I took every class. I took every class I could find. I am a person, when I want to know something, when I want to prepare, I'm going to take a class.
Yeah. I
probably took 10 classes on different parts of the process. That hypnobirthing, baby, none of those techniques work. I'm talking about I had the apps. I was listening to the tracks. I was doing all the things.
So you couldn't get deep into your delta?
No. I was like, damn that delta. What? They ain't say it was going to be, like that. And so, again, you could take the classes. You could do the things. But it comes down to your experience is going to be different. Your experience is going to be your experience. And I will also say, too, one of the things I feel like that I did during my pregnancy that I did myself a disservice, and you told me, I'm not going to look at you when I say this because you told me not to do this.
Well, I'm going to look at you.
But I had so many, like, this is what I'm going to do, and this is how it's going to happen. And it, I was trying to dictate.
Yeah.
I'm a control freak, so I was trying to control an uncontrollable process.
Yeah.
And when I say, I feel like I, almost sent myself into a depression by having these unrealistic expectations. So whenever I get an opportunity, you gonna say I told you so?
No, I'm not.
Whenever I have a girlfriend that's pregnant right now, and my only advice is give yourself grace. Don't try to plan. Don't try to predict. Like, go with the flow. And what's going to happen for you is what's meant to happen for you. And I know you like, girl, you say that now. But I didn't want to hear it. I was probably, I know I'm hard-headed. I'm stubborn. I was telling Christine, I don't care about none of that. I ain't packing no hospital bag, and I didn't. I ain't doing none of that. I'm not doing that because how I say it's going to happen is how it's going to happen. And God was like, girl, stop playing. And that really did me a disservice. Hindsight being 2020, that was definitely, the biggest, the worst thing I just could have done for myself. So I anybody out there who is pregnant, thinking about getting pregnant, trying to get pregnant, any of the things, just giving yourself grace, birth by grace. Is what I think is my advice. So what would be your advice for someone who's in that space where they're thinking about getting pregnant or preparing for pregnancy?
I would co-sign on exactly what you said because I always speak the exact words that you have just spoken.
I ain't want to listen, y'all. Learn through my mistakes, okay?
But it's okay. It was a learning experience, and you're going to go into your next birth and pregnancy with a whole different mindset.
I am.
And you're gonna be okay.
Going with the flow.
And that's the motto of my business. You got to go with the flow, because at the end of the day, no one is in control of anything.
And I mean nobody.
Right.
And I thought I was God's girl. I mean, I am God's girl.
You are.
I am God's girl, but he played me on that one. He did. So Christine, for the people who might want to get on your wait list, she has a wait list. It's probably already full. But where you doing it like 2024 at this point? I don't know.
We're still in 2023.
Still in 2023, y'all. If you just got a man right now, get on the wait list. Okay, if you just thinking about it, get on the wait list. How can they find you on social media and online?
So what we're doing that's new at Birth by Grace.
It ain't even a wait list?
I'm not that popping, girl.
Okay,
It ain't no wait list.
Okay.
But we do have services open to moms who are not opting for a home birth, okay?
Oh, okay.
So that's the new development and a new service that we have.
Tell us about it.
That is basically if you're pregnant and you have a provider, sometimes you can miss out on some really, great conversations and more information that you would need that would be very, very helpful to you during your pregnancy and to get you prepared for labor and birth at the hospital. You can come to us and we can have regular prenatal visits together in between your regular visits with your provider. We link you with a doula for support, and that doula will be your person to show up with you for support in labor at the hospital. So we just wanted to open our community to every woman who is, regardless of setting, right? So you don't necessarily have to be opting for home birth for that, but we are accepting home birth moms as well.
But late 2023.
Mid to late 2023. But yeah, that's kind of the new thing going on now that we're offering all moms.
And where can they find out more information?
www.birthbygracemidwifery.com. And we're on Instagram at Birth by Grace.
We're going to have a part 3, 4, and 5.
I would love to.
Of this conversation. I just love you, but the work that you're doing is so important for Black women specifically. She work with all women, but I'm here for the Black ladies. But for Black women specifically, underserved women to know that we have options, and we got to be able to advocate for ourselves.
Definitely.
So I appreciate you.
I appreciate
all that you
for
do.
Inviting me. Thank you.
You're welcome. This is our first podcast episode. She did good, y'all. Hey. Show her some love in the comments. Make sure y'all follow her on Instagram, and make sure you like, comment, subscribe, but also share this conversation, because you just don't know what you don't know until you find out you don't know it, and you don't want to find out too late.
That's
so
right.
Thank y'all for tuning in to another bomb-ass episode of the Girl Stop Playing podcast. First podcast. Yeah, right.
Come on.